Hey there, welcome back to Geeky Greenhouse. I'm Crystalline, and today I'm going to be showing you my method for repotting houseplants. I'll also be sharing some tips and tricks along the way that I have found really helpful and will help make things a little bit easier for you and keep your plants happy. So a few reasons that you may want to upsize the pot of your houseplant. Of course, if the plant is getting too big for the container that it's in and you're noticing the roots starting to become root bound or grow out of the drainage holes, then it's probably time to upsize. You may also want to just refresh the soil in your plant because it's not retaining water well, or maybe you just want to refresh the nutrients or provide a better draining soil mix. And if you plan on doing any propagations or divisions when you're repotting your plant, this is a really good time to do that because you're already working with the soil and removing it from its pot. The best time to repot houseplants is during the active growing season. For most houseplants, this is going to be in the spring or the early summertime. However, you can do this process at any point during the year. It's early fall right now, and I have some plants that spent the summer outside in the sun, so I'm going to be repotting them and refreshing the soil before bringing them back indoors for the winter. So let's get into it. The first thing you want to do is to choose your new pot. And I really like sticking to nursery pots, which is my first tip because they already have drainage holes and it's a lot easier to get the plants out of them. They're also a lot more lightweight, and if you're using a decorative pot, oftentimes they don't have drainage holes and they're a lot heavier to move around. So instead, you can use nursery pots, plant the plants directly in these, and then place them into decorative pots for show. Sizing wise, you'll want to choose a pot that's just a few inches larger than the pot the plant's already in. So today I'm repotting this little Hoya plant into a slightly larger pot here. The next step is preparing your new soil mix. And this is where I think a lot of people get hung up. There is really no reason to overthink this process. Any good potting soil will be perfectly fine for your indoor plants, and I like to mix in a little bit of perlite for added drainage if I'm using a traditional potting mix. If you're prone to overwatering your plants, I would suggest a really chunky dry houseplant mix like this one. You can also amend your soil with earthworm castings or fertilizer as you see fit. And my next tip is if you're using potting soil that was stored outdoors or out in the garage, or you purchased it somewhere where they kept the potting soil outside, I would recommend pouring boiling water over it before using it for your indoor houseplants. This isn't truly sterilizing the soil, however, I have found that it really helps to minimize pests and unwanted visitors. Basically, you just need to pre-moisten your potting soil with boiling water instead of regular temperature water, and then let it cool completely before you add any nutrients or before you start working with it to pot up your plant. This step isn't necessary if you're using a dry, chunky houseplant mix that was stored indoors like I'm using today. I'll leave a link below to my favorite indoor houseplant mix. However, it is more cost-effective to use potting soil. So I have my chunky houseplant mix here, and I'm going to pre-moisten it before adding it to the new pot. The next step is to take your new pot and fill it most of the way with your new soil. Be sure to leave some room at the top so the plant sits at the same height it was before. Next, you're going to carefully remove your plant and take a good look at the roots. Using nursery pots is great because it's so much easier to get the plant out. You can just gently squeeze the sides. Very rarely do I disturb the roots, but if you find that they're really tight and entangled, you can gently loosen them. Then gently position your plant right at the same height that it was before. The next step is to fill around the plant to make sure that the soil gets all into the sides. After repotting, you do want to give the plant a nice good drink of water to help the roots establish and make sure that the soil is evenly moist. Then you're going to place the plant in the same lighting conditions that it was before repotting. Now is not really the time to start playing with different lighting situations because it can add more stress to the plant. And my third tip is to hold off on fertilizing for several weeks. You really want to watch the plant closely and hold off on any feeding just to make sure that it has time to establish without stressing it out too much. You may see some yellowing leaves or other signs of stress, but this is completely normal, and after a few weeks your plant should be back to looking normal. And you do want to follow the same watering habits as you did before repotting the plant. And that's all there is to repotting. I'm going to put this Hoya into the decorative pot that it's going to live in for a while until it needs to be repotted again. And I'm gonna clean it up and put it in its final location. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you next time.